Hello everyone, and once again welcome to another Security Professionals training session. In this session we're going to be covering why most risk assessments are wrong and in many instances just downright dangerous. So for those who don't know me, my name's Tony Ridley. I'm a security professional who's been working commercially in the field of security for over 20 odd years, and most recently have developed and become an expert in the travel safety and security realm, running intelligence operations and consulting for multinationals and large corporates. So let's get into the basics of a risk matrix. What we're going to look at here is the benefits and reasons why most risk matrix or risk assessments are wrong, because most of you would be familiar with this sort of format where we have a risk matrix as part of the risk assessment, where there's a graduated response between the lowest possibility to the highest possibility, lowest impact to the highest impact. So what I've done here is I've superimposed over the top numerical values. Now some companies use alphanumerical versions, that is A through to Z, and 1 through to 5 on the A and the X and Y axis, but you get the understanding here that each square represents a numerical value. In this instance what we've done is graduated the scale by multiplying from 1 all the way up through to 25. But let's look at this when you actually put a mathematical equation over the top of this. This is what each square represents in terms of real estate. That is where you can find yourself in these relative risk ratings, and this just isn't right. This is a disproportional reflection or representation of how the overall process is addressed, and it certainly will skew, if not unbalance, the overall assessments and views. So let's go back to the original assessment here. Just ignore the numbers for a minute, but essentially these 9 squares here, what this now constitutes is a disproportional representation, because this, for all intents and purposes, now equates to 64% of your overall risk rating, just because of the attributed numbers and the cumulative responses. This format and this approach wants you to overestimate risk. It wants you to perceive significant gaps between the lower probability and impact events and disproportionately view those with a higher risk, when in fact we know, for those who have got a calculator out and already assessed it, this really only represents 36% of all of the real estate in terms of the cumulative squares. 5 by 5 by 25, that is 9 divided by 25 equals 36%. So again, this particular format just does not work. Now if then we start to examine it and we look at in various formats and graph displays, here you can see all of this numerical information now displayed in a pie chart. You've now, as I said before, got 64%, and even your median possibilities constitutes the bulk of where your squares and risk ratings will sit. It just doesn't work. Here, a more linear approach where we start to see the particular balloons and scale disproportionately represent the higher and medium risks rather than being evenly distributed. Again, a linear display. Again, the donut distribution, and most damning is this spider diagram, the wire diagram here. As you can see, the whole process is skewed towards a high impact, high outcomes, and the highest possibilities, and this simply isn't the case, and it certainly shouldn't be the way for conducting a sound and consistent risk assessment. So a number of you are probably saying, well, yes, okay, what about the numbers? Let's just manipulate the numbers. So again, if we then add numerically, instead of multiplying each particular square by its nearest neighbour, we then start to go up sequentially. So again, we'll do the same process. We do start to see an improvement in terms of the balance and the distribution, but marginally so. We still have disproportions and inconsistencies, particularly as we start to look at the linear scales going upwards. And again, the most telling version, we've seen an improvement in the distribution, but it's still heavily weighted towards the lower quadrants, which are the high impacts and high probabilities and even medium possibilities. Again, it almost wants us to over-exaggerate or over-amplify the fears. That's why the system doesn't work. If you are going to be using a risk matrix and you are looking for a simplified and standard process, then you need to be looking something along these lines if you insist on using this methodology, but I don't recommend it. So essentially what it represents is a dissecting model where each particular outcome, remembering, explained by either a different numerical process or a comprehensive word diagram, is that where these two probabilities and possibilities intersect, giving us this final representative square. Now each and every one of these squares has a numerical value for charting processes and to make the process standardized, but they all constitute and are all equal in terms of balance and numerical value. So again, we now have an even distribution distribution, when we start to compare. If we look at all of the variables, it's all linear, it's all standard, it's all comparable, and most importantly, the last one is we have an equal distribution. We are not skewed or weighted in any one particular corner or quadrant or any probability or possibility, and we're not artificially inflating the end results. So to recap, in terms of the pros, yes, it may be simple, fast, consistent, visual, transferable, minimal training, and a high decision-making tool, but in reality it's highly inaccurate, it's been significantly oversimplified, it's misleading, disproportional, it represents a risk to your assets, it ends in poor decision making, and it's just outright dangerous because you now have this fear, uncertainty and doubt, this amplification of risk. You've got the amplification of your end results, and you've got a disproportional focus on the assets and the processes and even the treatment solutions in which you should be applying. Don't use it, get rid of it, modify it, or at least explain to individuals, if you're going to use such a simplified model, that it's a dissecting model, it's not a mathematical model, and it's certainly far from perfect. So once again, thank you very much for joining us for this short session today. For those who would like further information, please visit my website at tony-ridley.com or email me at tony@tony-ridley.com. Thank you. I look forward to your feedback, and I appreciate all comments. Thank you and goodbye.